De Zerbi's Brighton need no introduction. No, really, no introduction. Brighton truly showed their versatility in their most recent game, lining up in a 4-2-3-1 formation that easily transformed into a 4-2-4 when attacking and a 4-4-2 when defending. Within this system, the wingers were positioned high and wide in the final third, while João Pedro and Ferguson worked on the same attack line, with either or both strikers able to drop back to link play. What sets Brighton apart from other teams is their ability to build attacks from various approaches, starting from the goalkeeper. Structurally, Brighton utilised a wide 4-2-4 to build up their attacks, with the back four and two central midfielders staying deep to force the opposition to commit players forward. This strategic move created space in key areas between the lines during the game against Newcastle, allowing the attackers to receive long passes from the goalkeeper and work towards the goal instantly. Another way Brighton broke Newcastle's first line of pressure started with either the goalkeeper or Gilmour taking the goal kick. Brighton would use a third-man passing sequence to unlock the opposition and get a central midfielder on the ball facing towards the opposition's goal. It's rare that Brighton will use the fullbacks heavily during the build-up and look to create numerical overloads in central midfield by having both strikers drop deep from the attack line, helping with ball progression. But before speaking about progression through the thirds, Brighton do attempt to lure the opposition and bait the press by playing backwards passing, recycling, which can be used against more passive teams to open up spaces before going forward, but generally they will look to play the ball backwards against all teams. Progressing the ball forward, Brighton also demonstrated their expertise in finding the third man, using quick combinations with the central midfielder to avoid pressure and find space. One way Brighton looked to unlock using the third man is by luring an opponent out of position with a player holding possession of the ball, then having a teammate move into that space to receive the ball from another teammate and create an opening for the attack to progress forward. Another way Brighton utilised the third man is to find a player in space in between the lines to receive a pass. They set the ball to another teammate who has peeled off and moved on the blind side of a defender. The central midfielders are key to this and their progression forward as Brighton look to progress centrally. They operate nearby, noticeably using each other in quick combinations to avoid the pressure and find players in space. The fullbacks have little responsibility during the build-up, but played an important role, particularly when the middle was congested. With more time on the ball due to the opposition's focus on the middle, Brighton's fullbacks could then find players in more central advanced positions and contribute to the attack, sort of working the ball out, then working the ball back in. Many sides in Europe use a box-like midfield but approach it differently. For Brighton, the two strikers drop from the attack line in between the lines, creating the box with the double pivot, where they can combine as a route to progress towards the opponent's goal. Receiving in the space between the defense and midfield, the striker can either turn at goal because of the space to drive into, or look to play in a winger who can make a run in the space vacated by the striker dropping. Once Brighton broke through the opposition's lines and facing towards the goal in attack, they like to combine with speed. In terms of chance creation, Brighton are patient in and around the opposition box. If they work the ball in wider areas, they'd rarely look to cross and rather probe until there's a chance to exploit space in behind the opposition's defense line. Wingers Matoma and Solly March are standouts on the field, taking on the opposition's fullbacks. This is helped by overlapping runs to create a 2v1 situation, allowing the winger to beat their defender and work the ball towards goal. Or, as we saw with Ferguson's goals, once the space has been worked for a shot, Brighton are not afraid of testing the keeper from in and around the box, having forward runners attack the back line, create space for a shot as the defenders would look to track the runs. Brighton's performance on the pitch and the incredible teamwork and strategy demonstrated during the game against Newcastle. Versatility and ability to adapt in various situations truly set Brighton apart as a formidable team, and me personally excited to see what the future holds for them. So here we are back in Football Manager, where we can now break down the Roberto De Zerbi tactic in Football Manager. First of all, does the tactic work? Yes, of course it does. In the Premier League, we finished third. Ferguson with the highest average rating in the Premier League, Matoma coming in third. Ferguson did score 28 goals with 11 man of the match performances. But to check out the full results, make sure you go to the website and the link is in the description. The download link. We didn't speak much about Brighton's defensive system during that analysis. That was more so how Brighton approached Newcastle in possession. But once we do break down the Football Manager tactic and start talking about out of possession, we could talk a little bit about how Brighton defended against Newcastle. Brighton's shape on paper, wherever you look, is a 4-2-3-1. Watching the game though, for me personally, we've got to use a 4-2-4 shape in Football Manager. We have created De Zerbi formations and tactics before, mostly using or always using the 4-2-3-1. Today, we're going to do things slightly different and use a 4-2-4 instead, given this is their shape in possession, but also when they are defending, João Pedro and Ferguson do lead the press. Now, of course, Brighton will adapt to different situations. So when you do download this tactic, or if you choose to download this tactic, there will be about 4 or 5 different versions, and then you can just select the ones that you feel is better suited for your team. But we can touch on them a little bit during this breakdown as well. But when Brighton are attacking the opposition, they will use a wider attacking width and look to play the ball more so in essential areas, but the shape generally will be wide, with the fullbacks wide, but also the wingers high and wide as well. So for attacking width to try and resemble that shape, we are going to be using the attacking width on fairly wide. Now, Brighton definitely, most definitely will look to build out from the back, especially with the centre backs just stepping on the ball. Now, to get those central midfielders in play and trying to use and activate those third man runs in the central areas, we are going to focus play through the middle, and doing so using shorter passing. Now, the hope here is to attack through the middle, but also play shorter passes in between the players, nice combinations, and releasing the third man. To do that quickly, we are going to be using a slightly higher tempo. But of course, in a different version of the same tactic, the tempo will be on standard to try and lure the opposition. So there will be one more focused on luring the opposition, and there will be one focused more on breaking through the lines using those third man runs at speed. And then for the approach play, we are going to pass the ball into space. Now, in the final third, Brighton rarely send crosses in, especially once they work the ball into the wide areas. There is very, very little crosses. So we are going to work the ball into the box and also use low crosses. The hope that if the players do choose to cross the ball, it will be more so a cutback sort of pass into the box. In transition, Brighton are a really, really good counter-attacking team. So when possession has been won, we are going to be using counter, and when possession has been lost, Brighton do like to put pressure on you. So against Newcastle, when they did lose the ball, Brighton would counter press. It's not so much in every single game, in every situation, Brighton would look to counter press the opposition. So again, handle this with care, but generally I will start with the counter press on. And then for the goalkeeper, to lure the opposition, we always want to look to lure the opposition and look to build up with many players deep. So we are going to slow pace down to allow the opposition firstly to drop deep and support the goalkeeper in possession, but also to lure the opposition and get them to commit players forward. Out of possession against Newcastle, Brighton did like to press high and put pressure on the central defenders when they did have the ball. So we are going to have a high press line of engagement. For the trigger press, we are going to use more often. We aren't going to be using prevent short goalkeeper distribution, because when the goalkeeper Nick Pope did have the ball, Brighton didn't really commit so many players forward in order to man mark and stop each player receiving the ball. Rather, they will sort of just cut off the passing lanes. So we are going to prevent the short, we aren't going to prevent the short goalkeeper distribution, sorry. We are not going to prevent the short goalkeeper distribution. So now, in goal, we are going to be using a sweeper keeper, defend, support, or attack. Your flavor, whatever your flavor is. We are going to be using defend for the fullback. We're going to leave him on support. You can change it for attack. Espinin, I always struggle to pronounce his name. This dude does like to get forward at times. He times his run smartly. He doesn't break forward at all times. So he will dribble the ball with, more so than the right back and bring the ball forward more so. So you can put him as a fullback on attack, or with the player instructions, you can just ask him to dribble more. So for his role, we are going to be using just a fullback on support. At right back, we are also going to be using a right back on fullback on support. And then in the middle, we're going to have one ball playing defender partnered with one central defender. Now, interestingly, I'm going to move straight to the forwards, the two strikers, because I believe the two wingers and the two DMs as well, there's a few roles that you can play about, and I'm going to talk about the roles that I used, the roles that I preferred, and the other roles that you can use. So with both strikers liking to drop deep constantly from the attack line, I feel that both strikers would need to be on a supportive duty. So I did originally start with João Pedro as a false 9. During the season, as things went on, I did change him to a deep line forward as he can move into the channels and also support Matoma there on the left hand side. For Ferguson, we are using a complete forward on support. So this is what the strikers look like during the season: a DLF and a complete forward on support, both strikers dropping deep to receive the ball. And then for the wingers, I did mostly use inverted wingers on attack. Now, they will have some sort of tendency to come inside, whereas Brighton's wingers do like just to stay out wide, even in chance creation. So when the team has the ball, you can ask both wingers to stay out wide, but then again, you are only increasing that tendency. You're not necessarily saying every time we have the ball stay wider, you're just increasing that tendency and asking them, look, just look to stay wider majority of the time. So this is what I mostly use during the season. But then again, if you really want your wingers out wide in attack to replicate that De Zerbi role position wise, then you can use a winger on attack. The only drawback here, the only con, is that the wingers in the game would then like to send in more crosses than an inverted winger, something that we was looking to avoid originally. So originally, I went with inverted wingers to try and get low crosses, but also you can get them to play out wide by asking them to stay wider. You could just have a mix. Have Matoma as an inverted winger and have Solly March as a winger on the right hand side. Now, moving into defensive midfield for the Gilmore role, I did use Register, noticing against Newcastle that he was more so of the playmaker out of the two DMs. He would drop deep and receive the ball from the goalkeeper, or he would just take the goal kick. He would take the goal kick and then they will play a little passing sequence, allowing Gilmore to then move forward and then have the ball facing the attack, where you can now see the pitch. You can see both wingers and you can see both strikers as well. So for me, I went with a Register for Gilmore, but you could actually just use a defensive midfielder for both of them, because you do also want them operating close by next to each other and just have them operating in close proximity. Now, the way I had it, having a Register and a Secondo Volante on the attack, initially they will start in close proximity, but as you build attacks, of course, the Secondo Volante will move into attack in and around that box. So this is how I originally had it, because I felt that Pascal Gross was more so that box-to-box midfielder compared out of the two. But if you want them constantly performing in close proximity, which you might want to do so against teams like Newcastle, Manchester United, home and away, you might want to prefer to use two DMs rather than having a Register and a Secondo Volante. Here is the completed version of the tactic. Looking at the player instructions, we have cross less often and staying wider on the wingers. The strikers don't really have much apart from the complete forward has shoot more often, and well, the Secondo Volante has tackle harder and shoot less often. Now, in Football Manager, if you do want to improve the results slightly, you can just go into all of these players and just add tackle harder. I believe personally that will bring better results, more positive results in Football Manager, possibly using a much more trigger press as well, if you want to kind of mix De Zerbi's tactics with some good results in Football Manager. But also, for some of you who may complain, it's not a 4-2-4, it's a 4-2-3-1, then we also do have a version that is a 4-2-3-1 with the attacking midfielder now on support. Unfortunately, that wraps up today's video. Thank you for the recommendation of De Zerbi. I am still reading the comments and reading up other recommendations. Now, if you're new around there and you haven't yet, make sure you are subscribed. If you haven't liked this video, make sure you like it now. But also, and only if you can afford to, if you want to find other ways to support the RDF channel, then make sure you check out the Patreon. The link will be in the description below. You can support the channel as little as £3 and yeah, have some fun, get some early release, and I will see you guys soon. Stay safe, God bless. Shout out to my Patreons at the moment. Goodbye. Beep.